My name is Martin Criminale, and I've been an avid cyclist since the early 80s. I've been an avid runner for the last 10 years, and I have always enjoyed these spectacular events like RAMROD. On the traditional course, which was the Fairgrounds to the Fairgrounds, which was I think 155-ish miles, we do have the fastest official recorded time until they stopped timing it. I didn't get into cycling until the early 80s. I didn't ride my bike at all in high school. I never had a BMX bike, never did any of that stuff when I was a kid. And when I got to college as an undergraduate, I joined a fraternity, and a couple of guys in the fraternity that I looked up to, they rode bikes. So since they were cool and since they rode bikes, riding bikes must be cool. And so I started up. And one thing led to another. After a couple of years of just cycling for fun, one of my friends started racing and started placing in the top 10. So I thought, well, he can do that. I can probably do that. So I started racing too. And then, like most activities that I've gotten into in my life, you know, once you dip your toe, you just jump all in and you go 100%. So I started riding everything. And someone's like, hey, here's another great, long, hard local ride. And I'm like, long, hard? Yeah, I'm in. Didn't even know what it was. And, heard about the acronym RAMROD, Ride Around Mount Rainier one day, and I thought, that just sounds epic. And I got to the ride, and holy cow, it was epic. And we had good weather and good views and a good group of people, and it was super fun. It was amazing. And of course, back then I was always looking for that longer, faster, harder challenge. And so we're like, let's go try and do it next year and go faster. I think we had ridden 7.5 hours roughly the year previous, and so our goal was to go under 7.5. We weren't sure if we could do it, but we kind of knew what our splits were from the previous year. These numbers sound crazy to me now, but we knew that we had to average about 25 miles an hour for those first 70 miles, until the park entrance. And then we knew that we had gone roughly 14 miles an hour up Paradise. And we knew that we had averaged, I think, 9 or 10 miles an hour up Cayuse. So we had those numbers in our head, right? And we knew that we had to at least meet those times or we would go slower than 7.5. I think my prep the night before was, by today's standards, kind of silly. I think I had half of a Domino's pizza because I thought, I'll load up on carbs. And Domino's pizza is probably mostly fat, but anyway, I ate a lot of Domino's pizza the night before, slept in my Volkswagen bus at the start, and woke up and we did the ride. Rob Collins was with us and 3 other people, and we all went really hard, because you had to Enumclaw Paradise, but then no one else could keep up with Rick and I going up the climbs, and we ended up being just the 2 of us from the entrance to Paradise, or at least from a couple of miles past that, all the way to the finish. And that was tough. That was tough. It was a warm day, and back then my ability to fuel myself properly during one of these events was not as sophisticated or as educated as it is now, and I didn't really have the experience, and so you just sort of snatching Cokes and Gatorades and whatever, and trying to make do with that. And I guess the only thing that saved me is that I was a lot younger than I am now. I recall cresting Cayuse Pass, and I wasn't seeing stars, but my vision was, I was going kind of cross-eyed, and it was really tough. And I grabbed a Gatorade from our support vehicle, which was my father, by the way. He had driven the car along. He was always has been and still is super supportive of all the athletic events that my sister and I do. And he volunteered to tag along with us. And so I grabbed the Gatorade from the top, and it was just like a lifesaver. Those little bit of sugar and that salt and just the liquid. I probably hadn't been drinking enough to that point. And my vision cleared up, and it was like, all right, let's go hard to the finish. I remember glancing at my watch thinking, holy cow, we could break 7 hours. And then we had the most incredible headwind from there to the finish. And it was soul-sucking. It was so hard. Rick pulled the most of those last 40 miles, and it was all I could do to stay with him. Once we had crossed the line, oh my gosh, 7:15, we did it. That's amazing. We beat our 7:30 time from last year. So that was really, really exciting. And some hugging, some handshaking, also some lying on your back in the grass because you're so totally spent. It was hard. But still, 7:15, that was pretty quick. Very happy with that time and that day. It was all we could do on that day. When, in those years, the late 80s, when we were trying to go really fast, there were a bunch of people trying to go fast. And people would employ the most crazy methods to do that. And even after I stopped racing and stopped trying to go fast at RAMROD, people would get out there, and it was like a team time trial. They would get their whole cycling team in support of them to basically bomb those first 70 miles until they got to the entrance to Paradise and pull them. So they didn't have to do a lick of effort. Then they would just release them at the bottom of Paradise, and these guys would try to do the second climb and the finish stretch and get a fast time. Some other people also met a support van at the top of Cayuse and got off the road bike and got onto a TT bike and finished the ride on a time trial bike in an attempt to go faster. So people were going to all kinds of lengths to set, the fastest time. And we actually were on regular road bikes the whole time. There were a couple people out there who were also going really fast and trying to go really fast. John Ospina and John Wyrick, they did it on a tandem one year, and they were bound and determined to, break the record. And they got very, very close. I do remember riding bigger gears than I would now. Obviously because I'm not as strong anymore and not as dumb. But I think, our concession to that ride back then was we would put on a 23. So a 39-23 was our lowest gear. And nowadays, I probably would not do that ride at anything less than like a 39-28. I just don't have the desire or the strength to, go flying up those things, up those climbs anymore. There were a couple people that I rode this with consistently back in the day. Rob Collins was one of them. For a while I was working at R&E Cycles with Rob Collins. He was a mechanic there and then eventually a frame builder there. And he was a super gifted athlete himself. And we got to ride a bunch. And then also Rick Benson. I rode RAMROD with Rick probably 4 times, probably in pretty close succession, maybe even 5 times back in the day. And he was with me the day that we went really hard and set a fast time. But it seemed like Rick and Rod were the 2 guys who would always stick with me, and we would more or less be the same fitness and be able to finish the ride together. My first, maybe second time doing RAMROD, they're a little bit of a blur. I wasn't so intent on absorbing the experience of the ride at the time. I was more focused on the time and just, making splits or achieving some goal at the finish. It's a bummer back then, but now at least I've come back several times and I've been able to enjoy the scenery and the views and stop and take pictures and, appreciate the volunteers and the food and all that stuff. The years where I went the fastest, we didn't use the ride aid stations at all. It's just way too slow to do that, right? And that's another thing they don't allow anymore are support vehicles, and I'm also in favor of that rule. I think that's a huge improvement. No support vehicles should be allowed. If it's not a competition, everybody should be using the ride's support, absolutely. So yeah, we were just flying, heads down, trying to go as fast as possible, getting food from cars, things like that. And it made for fast riding, but it also made for, in retrospect, a little bit less enjoyment of the event. Really, your enjoyment was focused on achieving a certain goal. I know that in the last 10 years, I've done it probably 5-6 times now. The first year I decided to sign up for the lottery again, I got in. And I was just like, oh, I wonder, I actually thought in the back of my mind, I wonder if someone pulled a string for me because I heard this is a hard ride to get into. And I got in like the next year again. It was like, whoa, something's happening. I was sure of it. But then the third year, I didn't. And so I'm like, okay, that's actually reassuring. I'm glad no one is manipulating the entries on my behalf because I would want everyone to have the same chance. When I came back into cycling and I realized I really enjoyed this activity, I just didn't need to have the racing part of it. I wanted to come back and do a lot of these events that really gave me a lot of pleasure back in the day. And in some ways you get even more pleasure from these rides when you're not trying to go your absolute hardest, because you can now talk to your friends, you can enjoy the aid station food, you can enjoy the scenery, and a lot of these hills that I used to race all my teammates up on training rides are a lot of fun to ride now, whereas they used to suck back then because you're always worried about, am I going to be first or 10th or whatever up this hill. So still really enjoy the ride, really appreciate the effort, and I've been volunteering the last 2 years. For all those years I was kind of selfish, just taking from the community, and now that I'm involved in some other aspects, realizing that it makes sense to give back, and volunteering is such an easy and can be very fun thing to do. It's like the least anybody could do. Volunteer for a couple events, help out the community, give back a little bit, show your appreciation for all the work that's being done so that you can do the things you really enjoy. Obviously, I still like to ride a lot, and I'm fit enough to do these centuries and RAMROD and stuff like that. And it's a real pleasure to be able to get out and do all those things. But I don't think I'll ever race a bicycle again, and I don't have the need to go the fastest on a bike. When someone blows by me now on the Burke-Gilman Trail, it's like, fine, you're faster. Have a good day. I don't feel that knee-jerk reaction to go after him anymore, which is what I absolutely would have done in my 20s, So no one's passing me. You gotta go fast, I'm gonna go faster. I think for the sake of the ride and for the participants, the evolution that it's gone through has been positive in every way. So I think getting rid of timing is good. I think getting rid of support vehicles is good. I think having to adhere to a limit in terms of number of riders that can be in the park on any given day is a good thing. Safety is not something that can be overlooked, and my perspective on that has definitely changed over the years. But I think RAMROD, if it wants to be sustainable and be as enjoyable and be as open to as many people as possible, to have that awesome experience, it had to make this evolution. So I think it's all good from that perspective. My body's already started to decline a little bit. My fastest years are behind me in the rearview mirror. I see people much older than myself still really enjoying being physically active, and so it's my wish, my hope, that I can be one of those people, when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. It's been fantastic to enjoy pushing myself and enjoying these super events, and it's my goal to be able to stay fit and active, well into my senior years, so I can keep enjoying these wonderful things.